Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Last Week Tonight, where we dissect the absurdity of American politics so you don't have to. This week, we're diving headfirst into the world of Supreme Court scandals, or at least, what passes for a scandal in the hallowed halls of justice. Buckle up, folks, because it's about to get weird. Our story centers around Justice Samuel Alito, a man who apparently takes his patriotism very seriously. So seriously, in fact, that he refused to recuse himself from cases involving the very organization that showered him with lavish gifts and trips. You see, it turns out that being wined and dined by folks with a vested interest in your rulings might just be a teensy bit unethical. Who knew, right? Now you might be thinking, John, surely there's a rule against this sort of thing, and you'd be right. It's called recusal, and it's kind of a big deal in the legal world. It's like the judicial equivalent of calling do-over when you trip over your shoelaces during a marathon. Except, you know, with slightly higher stakes. But Justice Alito, in his infinite wisdom, decided that these pesky ethical guidelines didn't apply to him. After all, he's a Supreme Court justice and rules are for mere mortals, right? It's like watching a dog chase its tail. Endlessly entertaining but ultimately pointless. And let's not even get started on the mental gymnastics involved in justifying this blatant disregard for judicial impartiality. Unsurprisingly, Alito's blatant disregard for ethical norms didn't exactly go unnoticed. The internet, that bastion of reasoned debate, erupted in a firestorm of memes, think pieces, and enough outrage to power a small city. It was like watching a pack of squirrels on espresso, except instead of nuts, they were flinging accusations of corruption and hypocrisy. And who can blame them? The idea that a judge might be swayed by lavish gifts and all-expenses-paid vacations is enough to make even the most cynical observer raise an eyebrow. It's like finding out that your dentist is also a shareholder in a candy company. Sure, they might insist they're acting in your best interest, but you'd be forgiven for feeling a tad skeptical. In response to the mounting criticism, Justice Alito did what any rational person in his position would do. He doubled down. Not only did he refuse to recuse himself, but he also penned a scathing op-ed defending his actions. It was like watching a child try to argue their way out of a timeout, except instead of a whiny voice, they used legalese and passive-aggressive jabs at their critics. The irony, of course, is that Alito's attempts to defend his actions only served to further erode public trust in the judiciary. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Well-intentioned, perhaps, but ultimately disastrous. Now, I'm no legal expert, but even I can see that this whole situation stinks to high heaven. The very foundation of our judicial system rests on the idea of impartial justice. And when judges start picking and choosing which ethical guidelines to follow, it undermines the entire system. It's like watching a game of Jenga, where someone keeps removing blocks from the bottom. Sure, it might hold up for a while, but it's only a matter of time before the whole thing comes crashing down. So, what's the solution? Well, for starters, we could try holding our elected officials accountable for their actions. You know, that radical concept enshrined in the Constitution? It's a long shot, I know, but a little accountability never hurt anyone. In the end, the Alito affair is a stark reminder that even the highest court in the land is not immune to the temptations of power and influence. It's a sobering thought, to be sure, but one that we must confront head-on if we want to preserve the integrity of our democracy. So, the next time you hear someone wax poetic about the sanctity of the judiciary, just remember Justice Alito and his curious definition of ethical conduct. It's enough to make you want to laugh, cry, or maybe just pour yourself a stiff drink. Or, you know, all of the above. Good night, and try not to think too hard about the state of our democracy.